Hello, boys and girls. Mark Krawczyk here again, or for the first time. Whatever, if you know me, it's again. If not, it's for the first time. I'll be reading to you a short story called Meat Man by my housemate and playwright and novelist, Kimberley Lynne. Meat Man. The village was celebrating a joyous feast. Bare-breasted women will palm leis, and paunchy children chopped oranges. Dogs barked and drums beat. The camera panned back to focus on a striped tent by a roaring fire where a man, naked except for a bone necklace and a feather headdress, was patting what seemed to be cornmeal paste over the curved back of another man. Tom rubbed his crusted eyes, thinking it was some sort of decorative paint, but there was no pattern in its thick, even application. The man under the paste quivered, shaking and muttering, his exposed fingers fluttering over an unseen flute. A smiling girl left a bouquet in the pile of offerings ringing the tent. She curtsied. The villagers sported high cheekbones and seemed to stand about Tom's height. "You should see this," Tom said to Hannah, asleep beside him on the couch, snoring softly. He patted the curve of her thigh and his manicured hand rested there. The camera cut to the cook doctor applying cornmeal paste over the main course's face. He inserted twin reed tubes into the sacrifice's nose so he could breathe as he was being roasted to death. The narrator explained that the meat had to be tender in order to flush the villagers' sins into their stomachs. The narrator continued, saying something about smoke inhalation, but all Tom wanted was a cigarette. "I haven't wanted one in years," he said to the cool blue light. He couldn't turn away. He couldn't move. "And a banana. My job's a little like this. In one breath they thank me, and in the next they..." He trailed off thinking he should flip channels, but he couldn't. His chest tightened and his pulse raced, not unlike the sensation of his panic attacks. The living room air filled with invisible waves of shimmering fat, and Tom wondered about the cameraman, where he was born, how he got involved, and how far. The narrator announced that all was prepared. The ground orchids that the sacrifice had ingested were sufficiently absorbed. The thatch huts wiggled, and Tom imagined the cameraman's arm shaking as two assistants balanced the pasted man on a spit over the flames. The camera dropped to the ground, showing running feet and the edges of skirts. Tom's esophagus contracted and filled with bile. The drummers yelled something and the TV screen blackened. Tom blinked and Hannah shifted. Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers sprung across the screen, trailing feathers. The village was gone. The next day, Tom smelled baked meat on his co-workers' clothes and breath. The scent wafted by like a fart through meetings, in the line for coffee, through the copier room, and in the elevator. He went to the bathroom 6 times to wash his hands. He thought about leaving work, claiming to have a cough, but the parade of clients marched on, each reeking of different kinds of meat, some more like pork than chicken, and some like heavily marbled steak, oozing blood and sizzling. The woman in the elevator stank of several-day-old meatloaf. The one in Starbucks was perfumed with cured bacon. He usually ate a luncheon hamburger with cheese and pickles, but he couldn't walk into Sally's diner. The stench of kitchen grease was overwhelming. 2 days later, he couldn't stand in the Safeway long enough to shop. The piles of food towered, and the sound of howling cows and pigs was deafening. He teetered at the door at the top of the food chain. He sensed carrion in his own skin, so he became a vegetarian. He lost weight and began to believe that he was growing taller. He couldn't kiss Hannah. He kept picturing her tongue lying on a bed of rye. So, instead, He sucked purple and black bruises on her neck. When he tried to bite her breasts, she objected. When he asked her to bite his nipples, she giggled, and his penis went limp. He grew a patchy beard, although his boss protested. He stopped getting haircuts and bathing daily because the world was missing a wilderness. Everything was too clean and wrapped in plastic. He listened to lots of Rush and AC/DC. His neighbors complained. He walked under ladders. He accumulated speeding tickets. Every day as he slid his key into his car, he was afraid for absolutely no reason. He was late to more than one court date. He wished Hannah lived farther away in a different time zone. So he gave her his Acura. He bought a vintage BMW twin-cylinder Boxer, but traffic lights slowed him, so he careened through bumpy cornfields. He thought about joining the army. He thought about skydiving. He thought about the paste man's fluttering fingers and how haunting that music must have been. He couldn't concentrate at work. The paste man's glazed look of sacrifice made him forget case details. His clients grew horns and bleated like sheep, sucking out his strength through twin reeds. He couldn't sustain them any longer. He had to find the cameraman. He called WETA, but the program director claimed that they had never screened anything like the documentary he described. He considered leaving Baltimore, buying a ranch out west somewhere. He wanted to climb off the grid and fell trees. He even went to Sunday Mass at St. Dominic's so he could once again savor the body of Christ. But all the things that were once terribly important now tasted like wet sand. The whole courthouse seemed drenched in a desperate avoidance of death. There was no surprise. Every day he leaned against its weighted doors, thinking to himself, remember, trust no one. All the forms, all his words, seemed like lies. The biggest rule in the book had been smashed. Man had made God in a lawless land that waited thousands of miles away, waited with something big and fleeting for under his skin. His beachland bungalow was heavy with objects, so he sold it with all its furnishings. He packed an old bowling bag, drove the Boxer into the reservoir, and walked into the woods.
That was gorgeous.
I hear clapping and commentary. Good night.